What's up, fight fans? This is Anchored Aggression, Episode 4. I'm Brett Cagle, joined today by Anthony Ballister. We're going to break down everything UFC 299 and Francis Ngannou, Anthony Joshua related. Anthony, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Definitely a great card last night.
Yeah, exciting fights throughout the card, man. Even on the prelims, Robelis to Spain, he didn't disappoint at all, 18 seconds.
Yeah, I don't think there was one disappointing fight out of all the fights on the card.
Yeah, no, I don't think so either. So, you want to start from the main event?
Yeah, of course. We can start right with the main event. Sugar Sean O'Malley getting the win over Chito Vera, getting his revenge, in pretty much dominant fashion. How did you see this one going?
Yeah, so Chito showed tremendous toughness in this one, but his output just really wasn't enough. In the early rounds, Sean O'Malley got out to a lead significantly in the strikes. He was able to put volume on Chito in the early rounds, and I thought Chito would go for a game plan kind of similar to the first fight and look for leg kicks early. We didn't see that. He really stood at kickboxing range with Sean O'Malley, and stood there and tried to trade with him. That knee in the third round, though, probably would have finished any other fighter on the roster. Like, Chito Vera is so tough, still hasn't been finished in his career, but he took a lot of damage in this one leading up to this unanimous decision loss. But that knee in the, I believe it was the third round, either the third or the second round, that knee up the middle by Sean O'Malley, you could just hear it through the broadcast how vicious and damaging it was. So it was a really entertaining fight, really a masterclass from Sean O'Malley. I thought it was the best that he looked in his entire career so far. I know he had the knockout win versus Aljamain Sterling, but he really wasn't losing many minutes in this fight at all, if any. So, I was really impressed with Sean O'Malley. I don't want to see him fight Poirier next. Like you said, I think there's fights in the division like Sandhagen and Merab that need to be, taken care of before he moves up in weight. But I really liked everything Sean O'Malley put out there, and his star continues to grow.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with more with everything you said. Chito Vera, man, that guy's tough. How many guys in the world would have been able to finish that fight? Like you said, he's never been finished, and he just shows great toughness. Now, he was outclassed. I thought Sugar Sean won all 5 rounds. I had it 45-50. Round 1, I thought, was a little slow on both ends. They both got fighters tend to start off slow. But once it got going, Sean O'Malley was more accurate. He was landing more shots. Chito definitely had his moments, and there was definitely moments in the fight where he definitely hurt Sean O'Malley. Particularly, there was moments in the 4th round and towards the end of the 5th round we hurt him. Definitely when he got that liver shot. But basically, most of the fight, I thought Sean O'Malley was outclassed him and outboxed him. And it was pretty much what we saw in the first matchup between the two. The only difference is Sean O'Malley's leg didn't give out from that lucky kick from Chito. So, the fight basically went how we thought. Honestly, I thought Sugar Sean would win the fight, but I thought maybe, we see Chito get 1 or 2 rounds, particularly in the later rounds. Chito's definitely a fighter that starts off slow, but he's usually winning those 4th and 5th rounds. But this fight, even though he was hurting O'Malley here and there, even the 4th and 5th round, it seemed like O'Malley had a bigger gas tank, and O'Malley just continued to land those strikes. And honestly, I think the fight that has to be made is Merab and Sugar Sean O'Malley. There's nobody else more deserving of a title shot. The only reason why it's taken this long for Merab to get the title shot is because he's great friends with Aljamain Sterling, and he didn't want to fight his best friend. Now that Sterling's out of the picture, it has to be Merab. As exciting as the Poirier and Sean O'Malley's fight would be, 2 great strikers, 2 guys, beating 2 legends in each weight classes, I think that's a fight that needs to be further along the timeline of the UFC.
Yeah, I agree completely. Like you were saying about this Chito Vera and Sean fight, though, I think that, Chito's toughness is one thing, but he's going to have to solve the problem of his output. In many fights, like the Rob Font fight, when he fought Rob Font, he knocked him down 3 times, and he won all 3 of those rounds. But those were the only rounds that he won, and he got outstruck by over 70 significant strikes in that fight. Still won because of the damage that he did. But in fights with Rob Font, Corey Sandhagen, and now this weekend, Chito has just almost been doubled up on total strikes by his opponent, and he's going to have to solve some of those volume and output problems, because you can't just be a finisher in the UFC. A lot of these guys are too tough to get out of there, and that's where he's coming into problems like with Pedro Munhoz, Corey Sandhagen, and even in that Rob Font fight that he won. So Cheeto's going to have to go back to the drawing board here. I know he said he wants another chance at UFC Gold. I don't know if he gets it. But for Sean O'Malley, yeah, the fight to make is Merab. That's the best stylistic matchup. You have the Combat Sambo world champion in Merab versus the dangerous kickboxer in O'Malley with power in his hands. And Merab also, there's more of a storyline to that one because Merab, like you said, does train with Aljamain, and Sean knocked him out, so he wants to avenge the loss of his teammate. So, you know, that's a good camp, good coach versus good coach, Ray Longo versus Tim Welch. You know, there's a lot to like about that fight.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to lie. Of course, I would like to see Topuria fight Sean O'Malley, but I just think that's a little too much too soon. I like to see a couple more title fight defenses. Maybe if Sugar Sean goes out there and maybe beats Merab, and then maybe if Topuria goes to Spain and defends his title again against Volk, maybe I'd be more open to them guys fighting then. But I think we got to at least see that, maybe even another title defense by Topuria first. But that fight would be exciting. I know if you're trying to figure out the most exciting fight, because Merab's not really the most exciting fighter, you know, it would be Topuria. But yeah, Merab definitely is the most deserving fighter. And honestly, I think that's the way the UFC is going to go. I think you'll see Merab and, Sugar Sean fighting at the end of the year. But in Cheeto's case, yeah, he's going to have to go back to the drawing board and fix some things, particularly where this division's going. I mean, it's going to be tough for him to compete against the guys. Like, we've seen how bad he looked against O'Malley. We've seen how bad he looked against Corey Sandhagen. If he ends up fighting like a Peter Yan next, I don't know how that's going to go for him. If he fights a Song Yadong, yeah, that would be a great fight. And maybe that's where he'd probably go next is maybe Peter Yan. I wouldn't mind seeing that. But again, that might be a similar situation against another great striker like Peter Yan. Chito Vera might end up in the same situation. So he's definitely going to have to develop and definitely have to tweak some things in his next training camp.
Yeah, and we saw how good Yan was in his performance. You know, he was able to put volume on his opponent and get a victory. So, yeah, I like that. I think that matchup's a good fight down the road, and I hope O'Malley fights Merab as well. Yeah, I thought it was a great main event. Before we get to the rest of the card, what'd you make on the card's rating as an overall? As an overall card, what'd you rate it 1 through 10?
I think it lived up to expectations. I gave it a 9.9 coming in, and I can't give it anything less than a 9.9 coming after it. The fights were definitely exciting. Some upsets, some favorites won. You kind of got like a mixture of everything. You got your wild moments and KOs. So I think this card pretty much gave everything that we'd probably want.
Yeah, I think so too. I don't think you can complain with it. I'd give it a 10. The main event, was it the back and forth exchanges like a Robbie Lawler versus Rory McDonald too? No. But at the same time, O'Malley stock rose out of it, and the UFC's biggest superstar continues to grow. So, a lot of historic significance to the matchup. And, yeah, I'd have to give it a 10 too.
And I know we're going to be talking about this in the later weeks because we're going to want to compare this to UFC 300. And now that we got the layout for that card, obviously we'll talk about it more. But if you look at the main event for that one, Alex Pereira versus Jamal Hill, honestly, I think that's more of an exciting main event than what we got right here. The card's probably just as deep. You can't go wrong with either card, but I think the main event in UFC 300 may be what makes that card a more exciting card than this one that we just had.
Yeah, that's two finishers at a high weight class. I don't see that one going the distance at all. Jamal Hill's coming in there with something to prove coming back from injury. And the guy that he took the title from was Glover Teixeira, the man who's coaching Alex Pereira. So that's a big storyline going into this one. At least the way I'm looking at it, that's a big story. I'm sure Alex wants to get redemption for his coach. And there's only one way Alex Pereira wins fights, and that's by devastating knockout. So it'll be interesting.
And now that takes us to our co-main event. And it was the only fight that I got wrong on the main card in my predictions was Dustin Poirier getting a TKO on Benoit St.Denis. Now, we did say that if Poirier was going to win, it probably had to be on the feet. I know coming into this fight, they're saying that, St.Denis had a staph infection, so he was taking antibiotics, which could have caused him to be a little sluggish. But honestly, as this fight gone on, I felt like every time he got a hold of Poirier, he was controlling the fight, winning the fight, and that's how he was going to have to win the fight, was controlling him. But it seemed like every time he got onto the feet, it looked like he couldn't even compete with us. And every time he was on the feet with each other, I got nervous for St. Denis. He looked like he couldn't compete with him with the striking. And eventually he was going to land the one strike that he couldn't get up from. He landed that right hook, got another shot on him when Benoit St.Denis was down, and that pretty much ended his lights out. And definitely an upset. But when they were on their feet, Dustin Poirier was definitely top class, and he earned the win.
Yeah, absolutely. This was a firefight and a war for as long as it lasted. Only went 2 rounds, but it was absolutely entertaining action from the opening bell. The willingness for St.Denis to stand and trade with Poirier in the pocket, to me, was also alarming. I didn't think that he would stand there with Dustin and just go back and forth with him like he did. He did control him on the ground in the first round and at points, and I actually thought St.Denis won that first round. But at the end of the round, you could tell that he exerted a lot of physical energy to keep Poirier down and under his control in that round. And I just really didn't think it was going to be able to happen for 5 rounds. But then he got himself caught in between takedown and striking in in a bad boxing exchange with Poirier near the fence, and it really only took 1 punch. We kind of saw Jim Miller versus Jesse Butler last year, a similar kind of like left-hand knockout where the guy didn't see it coming and kind of just quickly ends the fight. Dustin Poirier, though, legendary performance for him, being able to take on all comers. This was the brightest young prospect in the division that was coming for his head, and then he wanted the lightweight title, and I'm sure they would have given it to him after if he won. So Dustin Poirier being willing to accept this fight on 5 rounds against a dangerous opponent with staph infection. I mean, you can't say enough about the guy. He's a legend, and he's going to have a great fight moving forward. I'd like to see him fight Conor McGregor. Honestly, if McGregor's going to come back and he beats Chandler, Dustin, getting older, he's probably one of these guys that'll fight 1 time, 2 times a year moving forward. So if Dustin's next fight, say in August or like October in the back end of the year, I think that there's a good chance that with a win it'll be Conor McGregor.
Yeah, that's the tough question now. Obviously, if Benoit St.Denis won the fight, it would be pretty easy matchmaking after that because Benoit St.Denis would be a new upcomer. He'd definitely be right there, either going up against Justin Gaethje, #1 contenders matchup, or going against Islam. But now with Dustin Poirier winning this fight, coming off of a loss to Dustin Gaethje, it makes the matchmaking a little bit more complex. And it's going to be tough for Poirier to find a fighter next because I honestly don't know which route to go in. You already have Charles Oliveira going up against Arman Tsarukyan for the next #1 contenders matchup. And I pretty much think Justin Gaethje is going to get a title shot at some point against Islam. So I think we already have potentially the next 2 title shots for Islam. So the title shots are already taken up for the rest of this year. So where does Poirier go from here? I know him and Justin Gaethje, I think, are 1-1 against each other. So maybe if they can if they can have a rematch for a #1 contendership, I wouldn't mind that. Have the trilogy decide really who is the best one of the 2. Or I was thinking maybe he fight another up-and-comer in a Matthias Gamrot.
I was about to say the same thing. Gamrot getting the win, this weekend over the former champion in Dos Anjos. He's going to need a good fight moving forward. Also has wins over Jalen Turner and some other good fighters as well. So I think Gamrot would be a good opponent for Dustin. I think Gaethje probably fights for the belt if he beats Max Holloway at 300. I think that, Arman, like you said, Arman and Oliveira will get the next crack at Islam. And then, Justin Gaethje will kind of be on like that on-deck circle waiting for his next title opportunity. So as far as Dustin's concerned, UFC Hall of Famer, if you look back at some of the more historic performances of like older fighters taking on young contenders like a Ryan Bader versus a Tito Ortiz, that was kind of like a similar moment for Dustin's career here. He really had to turn back the guy that, was once him. He was once the young, hungry contender that wanted to get to the title, and take on the Eddie Alvarez's and the Conor McGregors and the Max Holloways. And now it was St. Denis's turn, and his ability to turn him back was really impressive and a great performance.
Yeah, that was definitely a great bounce back for Dustin Poirier. And, just when you thought he was done and just when you thought, he was past his prime, he shocked everybody and showed that, he's still a name that you're going to have to mention when it comes to title contention. And, he keeps winning these fights. Who knows? He might put himself back into contention. And he's never been a unanimous, champion. He's been an interim once, but never been unanimous. He's still fighting to achieve that. And, after this win against St.Denis, it's going to be hard to ever doubt, what he could possibly do.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%.
So now we go to our next fight, which is definitely an exciting fight. We had Kevin Holland against Michael Venom Page. Michael Venom Page getting the win like we predicted. What were your thoughts on this fight?
Yeah, we were all over this one. I called it by decision in the article I put up on Phantom Sports before. That was at plus 220. I really thought that Kevin Holland was going to be tough enough to survive this one, but he'd be picked apart on the feet by the more technical kickboxer in Michael Venom Page, and that's really what happened in this fight. Page looked great, was darting in and out with right hands straight. He didn't even set him up at times, would just try and catch Holland clean. It was really a thing of beauty. And Holland didn't have many good moments in this fight, to be honest with you. I had it 30-27 for Page. I thought this was one of the more one-sided fights on the card, and he really showed how technical and creative he can be on the feet against someone who's just as athletic as he is. And I know Holland had a lot to say about Bellator fighters coming in to this fight. Says that people don't pay for Bellator fights, so they pay for UFC fights. But there's some good guys over there, man, and you got to respect the talent worldwide. And there's guys like Michael Venom Page and Usman Nurmagomedov and AJ McKee and Johnny Eblen that would very well compete with anybody in the UFC. So we're getting to see that now. And the last two guys who came from Bellator have had successful debuts in Michael Chandler and Michael Venom Page. So, I wouldn't mind the UFC picking up maybe some more of those guys if their PFL and Bellator contracts expire. But I'd like to see AJ McKee and, like I said, Nurmagomedov in the UFC. And Holland didn't look great in this one. And, Page put on a technical kickboxing display over 3 rounds, and Holland couldn't do much about it or figure out the puzzle on the feet. What did you think about this one?
Yeah, I had the fight 30-27. I think there was some scorecards out there that had it 28-29. I thought Venom Page won all 3 rounds. I know Holland was getting a little frustrated because Venom Page was kind of, delaying the fight and doing a little, show for the crowd. But he just does that. That's his game. He's exciting. And obviously, yeah, the UFC is the top promotion in the world from top to bottom. No promotions can compete with that. But there are fighters out there in other promotions that can compete with these ranked guys in the UFC. And Michael Venom Page being one of them. It's just unfortunate that he came into UFC at such an older age. But the way he looked in it looked like he was just as good as he ever been. So maybe age is not going to be a factor for him. He still looks as great as he ever did. I think for him, he's definitely going to be ranked now. He's going to put himself in the rankings in this division. And honestly, I think a very, very exciting fight for us and the fans would be to have him against Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. 2 guys with similar striking, karate styles. The only thing is they may be doing a little running away from each other and doing a little bit of shake and bake like that. But I think it would be very, very exciting for the fans, and who wouldn't want to see those 2 guys fight?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely the fight to make. Those are the 2 best kickboxers in the entire division, maybe in the entire UFC from a technical standpoint. Like you were saying, though, they are both counterpunchers, and that might lead to a lull in the action as both guys are kind of sitting and waiting to, take advantage of their opponent's strikes. But Stephen Thompson and Michael Venom Page is a classic matchup. It's one of these, like I just said, with Benoit St.Denis and Dustin Poirier. It's kind of a mirror image of the guy that, Stephen Thompson used to be coming up when he would get knockouts over Jake Ellenberger and guys like that with spinning wheel kicks and the creative stuff that he used to do. Now Page comes in and is kind of putting his own flair on what Stephen Wonderboy Thompson had before him. So that's a great fight to make, and certainly something that could be the main event of a fight night or on any UFC main card pay-per-view.
And I think given, Venom Page already established popularity, his name, I think his age, I think they're definitely going to try to fast-track him. Obviously, at welterweight, there's already a lot of, title contenders already. So we're still talking, a few fights away before his name's even being considered for number 1 contendership. But they're definitely going to try to fast-track him. And, you gave him a ranked fighter in his first fight ever again in the UFC against Kevin Holland. Then why not fast-track him and get a guy who's just outside the top 5 in Stephen Thompson? And then that right there puts him in position to maybe challenge a top 5 guy in the weight class in his next fight. And I think they are going to try to fast-track him with his popularity. And I'm all for it because I like to watch him fight.
Yeah, so do I. I agree with everything you just said.
So now we go to our next fight with, we both had this one, correct, but it was definitely a great fight, very, very close fight. And we had Jack Della
Yep.
beating Gilbert Burns. I thought Burns, had his moments, particularly when he got this fight on the ground. I thought JDM won round one, but Burns was landing great elbows. He was definitely landing overhead rights. He was taking him down, and Jack Della was definitely more efficient, landing a lot more strikes. I thought Gilbert Burns was landing the more damage strikes, the more powerful strikes, but JDM was just more efficient. And when he got the fight on the feet, he definitely outclassed him, and he definitely destroyed him later on. And that finish was definitely spectacular. He looked great, I thought, against Gilbert Burns. I mean, honestly, I thought he looked better against Gilbert Burns than Bilal even did. And, I think Jack DM definitely put himself in title contention. He's on a crazy fight win streak, never lost in the UFC. He obviously had a lot of split decisions coming into this fight, but I think this was his coming out party, and he showcased that he could actually finish some guys in the top class. Now, he just beat Gilbert Burns, who's the fourth-ranked guy. So there's really not much more he could go from here other than fighting a number one contendership match. And, honestly, if you look at the contenders in this division, you already got Bilal getting the next title shot against Leon Edwards. I think a guy like Ian Gary, I don't see JDM fighting some guy like that. I don't think you go from fighting Gilbert Burns to fighting Ian Gary. So I think, JDM fighting a Shavkat Rakhmonov and a number one contendership match. You give Bilal and Leon the title shot. Those two guys are number one contendership. And I think that would be a great way for the UFC to go.
Yeah, certainly be careful what you ask for there. I think Shavkat Rakhmonov might be the most talented welterweight that I've ever seen watching the sport. So his ability to put together, knockouts on the feet and submissions on the ground are something that we haven't really ever seen. So Jack calling him out takes a set of stones, that's for sure. But as far as this fight was concerned, Gilbert Burns, in my opinion, was winning the fight until he wasn't. That first round you gave to Jack. I saw online it was really split 50-50 with how people had it scored. Burns had the takedown and control time. Jack had the better shots on the feet. In the second round, it was all Burns. I thought that one was the easiest round to score. Takedown, control, and then in the third round, obviously gets finished and caught with a big shot. But Gilbert Burns looked really good until he didn't in this one, and Jack's potential is continuing to climb. And him calling out Shavkat Rakhmonov is certainly not the easiest opponent that he could have chosen.
Yeah, and honestly, I agree with you. I think Rakhmonov is the best 170 on the planet. I think it's just a matter of time before he gets the title shot. And honestly, if him and JDM do fight, I'm definitely going to pick Rakhmonov every day. But I just think that has to be the two guys who get the next number one contendership with Bilal already having that established. And yeah, I gave round one to JDM. I thought Burns run round two. And I thought heading into round three, whoever was going to win that round was probably going to win the fight. And like you said, Burns, was doing good in that round up until JDM got the finish. But JDM's definitely, I think made himself into maybe not a superstar, but definitely turned himself into a name now after this fight. And, I think him and Rakhmonov definitely should be the next fight for him.
Yeah, certainly now probably a superstar in his native country of Australia. So, if they go back with a UFC pay-per-view, he might be able to be in that co-main event slot or certainly a feature on that main card. So, yeah, Jack Della Maddalena really proved himself this weekend. And I liked the fight. I thought it was a great fight. I thought that, it was high pace. And even though Burns was controlling him on the ground at times, we got to see where Jack has made improvements in his takedown defense and scrambling to the feet. We were pointing out that Basil Hafiz fight in our breakdown as maybe an area for concern. And we saw that Jack does still have limits to defending the takedown. Now, Gilbert Burns isn't Khamzat Chimaev or Colby Covington or Shavkat Rakhmonov in terms of getting the fight to the ground. But Jack was able to fend off submission attempts from a World Jiu-Jitsu champion in very bad positions. So, I was really impressed by Jack's takedown defense and submission defense in this fight.
Yeah, I was definitely very impressed. This is definitely, his best performance by far. So I had it, like I said, I had it the first round going to JDM, second round going to Gilbert Burns. But did you have the first two rounds both going to Burns?
Yeah, I had a 2-0 Burns. I thought that this was I thought this one was for Burns. I thought he really just had to survive 5 minutes. And I thought that was kind of echoed in the corner of Jack Della Maddalena because his coaches were saying it's 1-1 at best. He got that one. We don't know what happened in the first. We need a finish, Jack. And then Jack went out there and produced the finish. And he really had a heightened sense of urgency there in that third round going after Gilbert Burns. And, he really listened to his coaches and laid everything out there and did exactly what they said and got the finish victory. So I thought that was great corner work in between the second and third round by his coaches, too.
Yeah, and I definitely think, round one, you definitely could have gave it to either or fighter. Like I said, I thought JDM was being more efficient, but Gilbert Burns was definitely doing the more damage. Obviously round two was all Burns. And then, round three, I looked at the judges' scorecard. I think they may have posted it on Twitter after the fight, and it looked like, if JDM didn't get the finish, the judges' scorecards probably would have went with Burns. So, JDM had to have got the finish, and, thankfully he did. And now he's put himself in a great position to maybe fight for a number one contendership against a guy like Rakhmonov, who, right now looks like he's unbeatable at 170.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't wait for that fight. It was an awesome welterweight contest between those two guys. And, I'm ready for Shavkat and Jack if they want to do it.
And now we get to our next fight, which was Peter Yan versus Yan-Song Yadong. How do you see this one going?
Yeah, I was wrong in this one, man. And this was a close fight. I had it 2-2 going into the third. Peter Yan really, even until halfway through that third round, it was anybody's fight. On the live odds entering the third round, it was even money, which you don't see very often on live odds. So for me, Peter Yan really showed his championship medal and was able to get this fight to the floor when he needed to most. He put volume together on the feet against Yan-Song Yadong, who looked at times like he was loading up for one powerful shot. Maybe he's looking for a big right hand here or a counter left hook. But he wasn't really putting together those combinations that Yan was on the feet. Yan would throw 3 punches at a time and end with a kick, and really was tallying up those strikes over Song Yadong in this one. But Yadong's only 26. He's got massive potential. He's now fighting former world champions, in massive pay-per-view events. So he's getting the experience that he needs himself moving forward. His record might not look the greatest, but Song Yadong certainly is talented. But against some of these guys that can put volume on him and stay away from that big right hand, he's going to struggle. He was able to get Peter Yan to the ground at times and was physically stronger, in my opinion, but more technical was Yan and the better cardio for sure in this matchup. It looked like Song Yadong was fading late, and that's kind of the reason why Yan was able to take over there in the grappling in the second and third rounds. How did you see this fight?
I thought the fight was definitely pretty close. Coming into this fight, I did pick Peter Yan, even though a lot of people were picking Song Yadong. And I'm glad that Peter Yan won the fight. I thought it was more important for him. Song Yadong being 26 years old, he's still got plenty of time to come back and, go for another title run. Where I think Peter Yan really, really had to get this win because if he lost this fight, I don't know where he would go next. He would have been on a crazy losing streak. And just for his confidence alone, he really, really needed this fight. So I may have been wrong on a couple other fights on my predictions, but, I definitely was correct when it came to Peter Yan. I thought in the first round, though, Song Yadong was flawless in the first. I thought he looked like the better striker, the better grappler. I thought he was beating Yan in all phases, and I was like, wow, this may be the worst I've ever seen Yan look. But, Yan responded well as a former champion. He definitely won the second round. He was hitting Song Yadong with great uppercuts. He was outboxing him. He finished the second with a smooth, well-timed takedown. And I thought round three was very, very competitive. But I thought at the end of the day, Yan edged him out in the third round, especially, finished the round on top with another takedown. So I had Peter Yan winning the fight 29-28. Obviously, Peter Yan's not, in the title contention right now. But I think he could still fight another top-ranked guy. I would honestly I got two options for Peter Yan where we can go from here. I would mind seeing him fight Henry Cejudo, two former, bantamweight champions that never got to fight each other in their prime. So that would be a great fight to see since we never got to see him fight. And if he doesn't fight Henry Cejudo, then I wouldn't mind seeing him fight Chito Vera, like we explained earlier. Two great strikers, and to see if Chito can finally make those adjustments in his next fight.
Yeah, both of those would be great matchups. You know, I agree with what you're saying. So, I'm sorry. What were we talking about again?
So we said for where could Peter Yan go? I said I would like to see him either
Peter
fight.
Yan's next opponent. I'm sorry, I got confused
Yeah.
there. I was thinking about Song Yadong and thinking about him, but yeah, Peter Yan for his next opponent. I would like that fight. I think there's unfinished business between him and Cejudo. When he was champion, Cejudo really was about to come back to the sport and was talking a lot of trash about Yan. So that's certainly a fight that you could build up there as a fight night main event for sure. Song Yadong, you know, I think that he's too one-dimensional at this point in his career. His athleticism is great. He is 26 and young. That's probably why that's why I took him this weekend. I was wrong on this one. But Peter Yan, you know, his championship experience, I thought really helped him out in this one. And I liked what you said that he had more to lose in this fight. This fight meant more to him. If Song Yadong lost, you know, he'd still be in the UFC and around contention. Obviously not, you know, on the cusp of a title opportunity, but would still be around in these matchups. For Peter Yan, if he lost this matchup, who knows where he would have been, like you were saying. He might have even been released from the company. So, yeah, great win by Yan. As far as the prelims are concerned, what did you think about the Curtis Blaydes versus Jalton Almeida matchup?
So now, as I was with the Peter Yan fight, I was wrong with Jalton Almeida. You know, you called this one. You said, you know, Curtis Blaydes was going to win this fight, and you're absolutely correct. I thought, you know, Jalton Almeida won round one. I thought he dominated with grappling. He just obviously just kept going for takedown after takedown. But the takedowns really honestly weren't doing too much. Obviously, it was giving Almeida control of the round. But, you know, Blaydes was just getting up every time. Really wasn't doing much damage. And then in the second round, I thought Almeida was, you know, completely one-dimensional and went for a very, very sloppy takedown. And Curtis Blaydes took completely advantage of it and got on top of him and just hammer fist him to a finish. And it was great for Curtis Blaydes to respond this way. He's always been right there on the cusp of title contention and always been just short. So for him to respond to be, you know, such a great upcomer like Jalton Almeida, I think he's put himself in the conversation. I thought, you know, winner of this will probably get Tom Aspinall for the next interim title shot. And, you know, it would be nice to see Blaydes and Aspinall fight for that rematch, since that first match kind of went similar to like the Cheeto O'Malley fight, where it wasn't really a fair fight because Aspinall hurt his leg. So I would love to see the rematch, and it would be nice to see a guy like Curtis Blaydes, who's been there for so long, finally fight for a title.
Yeah, and really in this one, I thought that the striking of Jalton Almeida was the red flag. We haven't seen him much on the feet, and, you know, Curtis has gotten got at times against, you know, the division's best punchers, whether it be Francis Ngannou or Derek Lewis. But I knew Jalton Almeida wasn't that level of puncher, and Curtis Blaydes has found success against some of these middle-of-the-road strikers like a Dawkins or someone like that in his career. So I just had a hunch that if this got to the feet that Blaydes would have the, you know, advantage. Now, we saw him exchange, actually, in round two. It went back and forth in the pocket for a minute with big punches, but then Almeida, you know, kind of got predictable and went for a takedown, and Curtis just said, well, you know, screw defending this thing. I'm just going to throw you some punches in this position, and Almeida really left himself open and available to hit there. It reminds me of Josh Barnett, Travis Brown. When Travis Brown came down with those elbows on Josh Barnett, as he had him against in the same exact position in cage control, but with his head open here and was just eating the elbows down against the neck. That was the same position that Almeida found himself in this weekend against Curtis Blaydes. You know, so Blaydes, this was the biggest win in his career, in my opinion. Turning back a contender like Almeida, you know, who had been unblemished in the UFC coming into this fight. So, you know, great win for Curtis Blaydes. I don't think that he deserves to fight Tom Aspinall yet, and that's coming from a guy who's around Chicago. I'm a big Curtis Blaydes fan. I've watched all his fights, and I want Curtis to win, and I predict him to win a lot of the times. But I don't think that you can defend an interim title at this point. If Aspinall is going to defend a belt, they're going to probably have to make his title the undisputed title and just strip John Jones altogether. And if Blaydes wins that fight, I don't think that's a fight you want to sell in John Jones versus Curtis Blaydes. I don't think that's one I mean, John Jones will sell tickets on his own, but as far as pay-per-view is concerned, I don't know how much notoriety Curtis Blaydes would bring to that matchup, and that's certainly risky if you put him in there with Tom Aspinall. I think Tom would probably get the job done. But I'd like to see Curtis against somebody else here in the top of the division, and there's a lot of heavyweights out there that are looking at a crack at contention themselves.
Yeah, I know. Obviously, he called out Tom Aspinall, and Tom Aspinall said he would love to run it back. The only thing is we might honestly see Aspinall defend an interim title shot belt because John Jones only wants to fight Stipe. At this point of his career, that's the only interest he has. He doesn't want to fight any of these young up-and-comers and risk that, that record. I know we got a disqualification, but he's basically undefeated. He's not going to want to risk his legacy. And Stipe's, usually, universally recognized as the heavyweight GOAT. So John Jones wants to beat him for legacy purposes. And even Dana White already came out and said he wants to have that as the next title shot. But obviously, Aspinall's not going to wait a whole nother year because these two guys probably ain't going to fight to the end of the year by the time John Jones recovers from his injury. So Aspinall's not going to sit there and wait this entire time. So what the UFC might do is they might just have Aspinall defend their interim belt, and then when John Jones and Stipe fight, John Jones and Stipe retire after the fight, and then Tom Aspinall just becomes the undisputed champion at that point. But if he is going to defend the interim belt while we wait for John Jones and Stipe to fight, then it's got to be Curtis Blaydes because he's already beaten Sergey Pavlovich. And, we already seen Cyril Gane fight enough times for, number one contendership and title shots. So I think it's got to be Curtis Blaydes. And, it's kind of like a similar situation to O'Malley and Cito. Aspinall would like to, revenge one of his few losses. It was definitely a fluke. And Curtis Blaydes, has the confidence thinking that he could do it again. So, it's definitely a fight that I would like to see. If the UFC doesn't go that way and they have other, options, that's fine. But I wouldn't mind going that way if John Jones is really set on not fighting any of these other young guys.
Yeah, but that's the thing. I think John Jones needs to fight one of these young guys for his legacy. If he's going to sit there and say he's better than Khabib because Khabib went and ran and didn't fight who he had to fight, you can't do what he's doing and fight Stipe Miocic and then not fight Tom Aspinall in the next wave of up-and-coming contenders. You've got to give the ability to pass the torch there. I know that's a wrestling term, WWE-wise, but it applies here too because he has the notoriety. He's the most famous fighter on earth. He's known as the baddest man that's ever lived. John Jones he's the Muhammad Ali of our sport. He's the Mike Tyson of our sport. He's got to give that opportunity to the next guy so this sport can continue to grow past him. And if he goes and does a Floyd Mayweather and picks his opponents so that his record looks great later in his age, people will remember that. And he's going to get through Stipe. That's going to be an easy fight for him, I believe. And then he's got to fight Tom Aspinall. Now, I don't know how many times in the history of the UFC an interim title has been, put up. I don't know how you do that. I don't know how you put an interim title up while there's still an undisputed belt out in that weight class. I don't know if it's ever happened in UFC history. So it's certainly circumstances that we haven't seen in a while. Dana's not going to want to strip his guy and John Jones and make him mad. He goes and strips John Jones. Maybe John Jones does only fight one more time in his career, So there's a lot of business aspects to this decision that Dana White's looking at. And I wouldn't mind if they just put Tom Aspinall on the shelf. If they just paid him, say you pay him his game check or his fight check for a fight that never happens, and you just keep him paid for the year and on ice and tell him that he's going to fight the winner of Stipe and John in December. I wouldn't mind that, but I don't want to see people get into the, title opportunity that John Jones just certainly is going to be like, no, I'm not fighting Curtis Blaydes. That makes no sense. I want to see John get into these historically great matchups moving forward that us as fight fans are going to care about.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I mean, the fight to make at heavyweight is definitely Tom Aspinall and John Jones. Yeah. That's definitely the fight to make. Obviously, we're never going to get Francis Ngannou versus John Jones. So the next best thing can be Tom Aspinall versus John Jones. But like you said, with the relationship that Dana White and John Jones has, and, with the lengthy career that he's had fighting all the top guys, obviously Dana White is going to let John Jones pick and choose what he wants to do. And, because of that, we may see some circumstances like a Tom Aspinall defending an interim belt against Blaydes just because, Dana White wants to please John Jones, not strip him of the belt, while also letting him only fight Stipe and then just walk out of the UFC without fighting these young guys. But yes, that is the most exciting fight to make would be Aspinall and John Jones.
Yeah, I think so too, man. That's the one with legacy on the line. Aspinall's this guy who reminds everybody of a young Frank Mir. He can get it done striking. He can get it done on the ground. His dad's a jiu-jitsu coach, and he's been rolling around since he was an infant on the jiu-jitsu mat. So Tom Aspinall's worked his whole life for this opportunity, and I'd like to see him get there. Because, listen, John Jones goes out, and he just goes into the sunset. Nobody's going to know who the UFC heavyweight champion is moving forward, and that's a huge detriment to your company. If Tom Aspinall goes out and beats John Jones, he's now the guy. He's now who everybody is saying that's the baddest man on earth. This is Tom Aspinall, and you've got a real player in pay-per-view. So I really don't think Dana's going to let this guy go without fighting the next wave, especially how the contract negotiations went with Francis Ngannou.
Yeah, 100%. I would love to see that fight.
Yeah.
Now we get to our yep.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, what do we got? What do we got next? Is it Phillips and Munhoz?
I was gonna say we got Matias Gamrot against Rafael Dos Anjos. Now I said in this fight it was gonna be very one-sided. I was correct that Gamrot was gonna win, but man, for a 39-year-old, I thought Dos Anjos looked great. He definitely made Gamrot earn it. He definitely didn't just stand there and just gave him the win. He didn't let Gamrot walk all over him. He sat there and got his shots. He caused Gamrot look distressed. Even in the beginning of the fight, it looked like Dos Anjos maybe even could win this fight. Obviously he didn't win it, but he showed that he could still compete with the top guys in the division at a 39-year-old's age. So how many fighters out there his age is better as Dos Anjos to even be competing with a guy like that? But for Gamrot, for him to beat another ranked winner, like I said before, he's definitely put himself as one of those names in there for one of the top contenders at lightweight. And I would like to see him fight maybe a guy like Dustin Poirier next in his next matchup.
Yeah, what energy Mateusz Gamrot has. I made the comparison to Merab Dvalishvili on our pre-fight show, but I really would like to echo that again. Just the way he goes into takedown attempts and chains them together. If he doesn't get the first one, he's going for the second. If he doesn't get the second one, here comes the third. Mateusz Gamrot really is one of the best grapplers at lightweight right now. One of the most energetic fighters and guys with the best cardio in the entire UFC, in my opinion. But like you're saying about Rafael Dos Anjos, championship material there, really tested the young fighter in Gamrot and gave fight fans and Dana White and all of us a presence for where Gamrot's really at. And in this stage of his career, that's probably what Dos Anjos is going to do for you. I don't think he's going to go on a run himself, but he's a guy to where you could fight him versus the Moicanos, the Gamrots, the Fizieves, these guys who are on the outer wave of the top 10 to see where they're at. And, I really liked what you said about RDA. I thought that he put on a great performance for his age. He looked good on the feet. Gamrot's going to have to figure it out, man. At some point, he's going to be against someone who's going to be able to stop a takedown. And whether that's Islam Makhachev, if he gets to that point, or someone else in the division, he's going to have to evolve his striking a little bit. If you sit there and you're taking big punches against a 39-year-old Rafael Dos Anjos, who entered the sport as a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, then you're going to have problems if you can't take a guy to the ground and he's a serious striker. So there are certainly still aspects of Mateusz Gamrot's game that can improve. I think that his striking is, good, not great, but his grappling is tremendous. His cardio is as good as it gets, A+. And, he's a great fighter, but Rafael Dos Anjos really tested him in this matchup. But I did have it for Gamrot going to the cards, like you were saying. I think I had it 30-27. I'd have to go back and look. I might have given that first round to Dos Anjos based on what he was able to do on the feet there. But I had the fight for Gamrot, and it was convincing once the fight was ended due to that control time.
Yeah, and honestly, where would you want to see Gamrot go after this? I know it's kind of weird because he beat Arman Tsarukyan, but then he lost to Beneil Dariush, and then Tsarukyan beat Dariush, and now Tsarukyan's fighting Oliveira for a number one contendership. So now Gamrot's stuck in this weird, space. So that's why I like to see him fight either Dustin Poirier. He was also like in that in-between space. Or if he does have to fight someone else, maybe have him fight Beneil Dariush, see if he could revenge that one loss.
You know who I'd like to see him fight? Benoit St.Denis. I think those are two guys that both are similar styles, and they both have to figure it out on the feet moving forward. Both of these guys are great grapplers, European grappling champion in Benoit St.Denis. We saw that he was able to get Poirier to the ground at times in their fight. and that's really Gamrot's bread and butter. So let's put these two guys against each other and make them figure it out on the feet. I think that they would cancel each other's grappling game out. I think the cardio of Gamrot would be an advantage for him over St.Denis, and I think St.Denis' aggressiveness and willingness to go for the finish would be an advantage for him over Gamrot. So that's something that I think you could turn into a main event of a fight night that, I really want to see that matchup.
Yeah, honestly, now that you mention that, probably St. Denis would probably be the best option for Gamrot. So there's definitely some options out there for him. But yeah, he's definitely, if he keeps winning these fights, he's definitely going to continue to move up the rankings. But like you said, if he's going to want to compete at the top of this division, a division that's one of the most stacked in UFC, that's all around, he's definitely going to have to get better striking if he's going to want to, really make a serious title run.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you 100%.
So now we bring it to the Kyle Phillips and Pedro Munhoz fight. How did you see this one going?
So Pedro looked good early, and then Phillips really got going, man. The combinations that Kyler Phillips put together in this one were absolutely beautiful. His ability to go jab with the body, jab to the head, and then throw spinning attacks that Pedro didn't see coming. He was hiding kicks as like the third or fourth strike in a combination that really would have knocked a lesser fighter out unconscious. I don't know how Pedro saw some of those strikes coming. The way Phillips was able to chain together takedowns and then put his striking and make it look like he was going to go for a takedown, and hit Pedro cleanly. The hybrid is certainly a great nickname for Kyler Phillips because he is one of the most well-rounded fighters, young fighters that we have on the roster right now. And his kicking game really impressed me from distance and with his spinning attacks and creativity. Munhoz, I don't know if he could have got the fight to the ground. Phillips actually ended up getting him to the ground later after damaging him on the feet. So I thought Pedro kind of was just at a disadvantage in this one. Kyler showed how talented he is, and he's going to be a real player moving forward.
Yeah, I was definitely very impressed with Kyler Phillips, and I definitely underestimated him coming to this fight. I know we said in the preview video, I definitely said I was underestimating him. I didn't understand the hype. I didn't understand why he was the favorite over Pedro Munhoz, and I couldn't have been more wrong. I had Kyler Phillips dominating this fight with a 30-27 victory. I didn't think Munhoz got any rounds on him. Obviously, Munhoz had his moments, but I thought he dominated with great kicks, great striking. And, I was very impressed with him. He's obviously going to be ranked now. He's definitely, still young. He's an up-and-comer. And I would like to see him fight another young, up-and-coming bantamweight fighter, maybe like a Jonathan Martinez, another guy who's up-and-coming on a win streak. But, Kyler Phillips is on a 3-fight win streak. He looked great in this fight. And he's definitely going to be a player in the bantamweight going forward.
Yeah, I think so, too. In the top of the bantamweight division is just absolutely stacked. I think that this is the best division in all of MMA right now. Even outside of the UFC, you have Patchy Mix. You got Danny Sabatello, Magomed Magomedov. You got great guys outside the UFC at bantamweight. So 135 pounds has a lot of great talent right now. Kyler Phillips is very talented, and I overlooked him as well. I didn't really know why. He was a 2.5-to-1 favorite over Pedro, who'd fought so many great fighters in the past and former champions. But Kyler Phillips is coming into his own, and he's going to now go into these matchups with former champions and top contenders. And I can't wait to see, how far he can make it at the bantamweight division.
Yeah, I definitely like to see. I'm interested to see who they give him next. If they give him someone, still just outside the top 10, or if they want to fast track him and get him inside the top 10 opponent. But he's definitely going to be a player. And like you said, it's hard to argue with the bantamweight division not being the deepest division in UFC. Obviously, there's a few other divisions like 155 and 185 that are obviously also really stacked, but it's hard to argue against that 135 division. There's so many killers in that division. It's like we met, a good 6 of them just on this card alone. Like Song Yadong and Peter Yan.
They're just be a next matchup for Kyler. I think that could be a very good next matchup for Kyler is Song Yadong.
Yeah, I would love to see that. That would be 2 unique strikers going up against each other. 2 young fighters, and I would like to see that.
Yeah.
Now we're going to discuss the early prelims. I know you're probably going to want to discuss the heavyweight that you've been previewing all week. So if you want to discuss what you thought about his fight.
Man, coming into this one, I thought minus 330 for Rubelis Despain was stealing. I'd have bet it down to him to win by knockout in a round, and I did. I actually won some money on this contest. I really didn't know where the odds makers. I know they had him as a favorite, but I thought he could have been as large as 10-1 in this fight. I really thought that he just had way more talent than Josh Parisian. Josh is a tough fighter, but you can take one look at him and realize that he's not a contender. He's not one of these physical presences in the heavyweight division that's going to be able to take you out of there. And Robeles-Jalton is 6'8", 87-inch reach, broke the UFC's reach record, 18 seconds. He finishes this one, and Parisian could have been finished earlier than that. That first head kick that Despain threw was at about 5 to 10 seconds in the fight, and that one, if Parisian didn't get his arm up in time, that one could have ended the fight and sent Parisian cold. So this guy has one strike knockout power. He knocked him out moving backwards, kind of like a old Chuck Liddell, old school knockout, moving backwards away from the opponent and still able to drop him. This guy's got legit power, and I want to see him fight a ranked contender next. I don't want to see him screw around with these guys like Jake Collier and Jared Vandera and Parisian, who he fought today. Those type of guys, I think you see the talent level is a little bit below where he's at. I think right now you could throw him into a matchup versus Rosenstruck or Volkov, and I think he might even win by knockout. So the best strikers in this division are going to have problems with him. It's just where he goes to get to the title or get to contention. Because if he fights a guy like Curtis Blaydes or a guy like Jalton Almeida, we're going to learn a lot real quick, because that's the way to beat this guy. You got to take him off his feet and get him to the ground and see what his submission abilities like. He's been a Taekwondo specialist his whole life, so we haven't seen him be tested on the ground at all. All of his fights have lasted less than 10 seconds almost. 18 seconds this weekend was the longest he's been in there in over a year. So Robeles-Jalton to me is the next best prospect in the heavyweight division, and he's going to put on entertaining knockout finishes.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I think, with Jalton Almeida losing and Shamil Ghazi losing, I think Despain has to be the best, like you said, heavyweight prospect coming up in the rankings. And with him being already 35, he, we said this before about other fighters, but him in particularly, we have to fast track him in the rankings. And they definitely got to give him a ranked opponent, I think. I would like to see him get like a ranked opponent that's also a good striker. I would like to see him fight a high-level striker first, and then maybe give him like a ranked heavyweight that could do some ground game and some grappling. So I was thinking maybe like a Derek Lewis. I think that would be a very, very exciting fight.
That'd be a great fight, man. That'd be a great fight.
Yeah, I think those two guys with their styles, I would like to see those two guys, those two monsters, fight each other. One of them's gonna get knocked out. So that would be a very exciting fight. And also I think the early prelims gave us a lot of fighters to be excited about. I thought Michel Pereira, going on a 7-fight win streak. He won in dominant fashion in the first round. He's got to fight a ranked opponent next, maybe Anthony Hernandez or Ramon Dualizi.
That'd be a great matchup.
So, and then we got Philip Lins, who I thought won in a brawl. I thought that was one of the best fights of the night with Ian Cutabella. Lins is a little on the older side. He is 38. But again, another guy on a 4-fight win streak. I don't think he's ever going to, really, go on a title run. But I definitely think he can maybe, get into like the rankings at some point.
Yeah, since moving down to heavyweight, like you just said, he's won his last 4. He's 4-0 since moving from heavyweight to light heavyweight, and has progressively gotten in better shape. That's why I picked Lins in this matchup. I won a parlay with Lins in it, and I had Despain knockout first round, Venom Page decision, and some other things. But I really liked him in this matchup, and yeah.
Yeah, I think he's definitely got to fight. With his age, he's definitely got to fight someone in the rankings. I would think maybe like a Dominic Reyes or a Dustin Jacoby. Definitely got to fight someone in the rankings at his age, and probably sometime within maybe at UFC 301 or maybe a fight night coming up.
One more thing about Robeles-Jalton. You're talking about his age at 35, and you're correct. They are going to have to fast track him, but at heavyweight, you can fight kind of into your later years to the 40, 41, 42. And being a striker and not a grappler like a Daniel Cormier, you see some of these grapplers fade out quicker because of the knees, and the amount of takedowns that they've done over the course of their life has taken a toll on their knees and their back and their body. But For a striker, you go and look at a guy like Chet Congo who competes in Bellator well into his 40s. So I think that Robelis de Spain is going to be a problem here for at least 5 years moving forward. That's just kind of how I'm looking at it. But the Derek Lewis fight, like you said, is the best fight to make for him. If you don't throw him against a ranked contender right now, you're going to have guys get seriously hurt. So, I know that's kind of what we're here to do, is see people get into fights. But you're going to have legitimately people years off their lives if they're fighting this guy, the unranked guys.
Yeah, 100%. And if there ever is a division that you can fight at an older age, it's definitely light heavyweight and heavyweight.
Yeah.
Obviously, though it's usually the divisions 170 or lower that start to decline at around 35 or older. But yeah, like you said, he's definitely got a 3 to 5 year window to really, really compete. And he's definitely I would like to see him maybe fight 2 more times this year. I mean, that fight was he was in and out, so I don't see why he can't just have an early turnaround and fight within the next 6, maybe even 2 months at most. Fight a ranked guy like Derek Lewis, and then maybe even fight another guy ranked side in the top 5 or ranked side in the top 10 at the end of 2024.
Yeah, and Dana likes the new shiny toy. We saw with Chimaev. He threw him back out there a week later. So, he didn't take any damage. If a guy misses weight, maybe at heavyweight, or a fight gets canceled or pulled, don't be surprised if Robelis de Spain slides in there. If there's a guy that's on the cusp of a ranking that has an opponent get pulled from a fight, he's ready to go. So, could
yeah, and then the last fight I wanted to mention in the early prelims is you had the flyweight. You had Asu, who won, moving to 19-2, who pretty much won unanimously. And he's looking like a guy who, we already talked about how great the flyweight division is. He's looking like a guy that's going to probably be fighting a ranked flyweight contender soon, too. So this card just gave us endless amounts of guys who are either going to be ranked or going to be fighting ranked opponents.
All right, fight fans. It looks like Anthony had a little bit of technical difficulties there. We were talking about that last matchup. One second, Anthony's trying to join again. Anthony, you back? Hello? But as Anthony was talking about with that matchup with CJ Vergara actually missed weight in that contest, the second fight of the night. So that was a great win by Abu. So the flyweight division has a lot of young prospects coming up. We just were talking about Steve Erceg last weekend. Manel Kopp's up there. I like this flyweight division. It's the best and deepest it's been in the UFC's history, and certainly my time watching the sport. That's going to be it for us this week. Anthony was not able to get back on here. We're going to break down the Tybura versus Tuivasa card for you guys coming up this next weekend. No week off here for the UFC. We'll be back with our picks and predictions on Wednesday's show. So look out for that coming up next week. Thanks for joining us today. UFC 299 was a great fight card with talented fighters from the early prelims to the main event. Great main event, great co-main event, legendary performance by Dustin Poirier. We got a new heavyweight star in Robelis de Spain. So, Anthony, we back? All right, so we have a new heavyweight prospect in Robelis de Spain. So, fight fans, tune in next week to watch Tuivasa versus Tybura from the Apex, and we will be giving you our prediction show at some point next week. Thanks for joining us. I'm Brett Cagle. Anthony had a little bit of technical difficulties. I'm sure he thanks you guys for being here as well. We'll see you next week.